episode. Today we're going to talk about crew building. I'm really excited to help you guys build your teams in your local areas, whether you're part of our, community, the Craftsman Painter community, or an independent. This is all about helping you build a dynamic and effective team. Let's jump into it. So, crew building your team. This is a vital part of the Sprint OS system. Okay, the system that I wrote about in my book with the same name, Sprint. And I'll tell you what, in our business, in our industry, there are really just, we just try to keep it really simple. When it comes down to it, there are two parts of the business. There's getting the work and doing the work. And when you have strong systems in place, that's great. But unless you have the people to fulfill those systems, to operate it, to do the work, then look, a system, it might as well, it's just going to be a system that sits on your shelf collecting dust. It's not going to be very useful. And so making sure that you have what it takes to build a team, it's so vital, so important. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. When I think back to when I first started painting in this industry, it was really an industry that kind of, I just kind of stumbled upon it, right? And that's the case with a lot of us in this industry. We have a relative, we have a friend, nobody really grows up thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to be, some kind of house painter. Maybe you've got some, second and third generation people here who that's what they, have always wanted. But for some reason or another, painting is just one of those things where it just falls into our laps. And then for a lot of us, we just discover that it's something that we really enjoy, and we like the product, we like the service, we like working with our hands, we like, we just like it. And so we want to do it. And so if you're like me and you found yourself, graduated from high school, didn't really know what you were going to do, needed to make a little bit of money, maybe you found painting, maybe it landed in your lap. Now, for me, I started back when I was 18 years old, and I started out as an apprentice. I was trying to save some money for a mission for my church, and I needed a job. I was working at a gas station, wasn't loving it. And I had a friend whose dad had a contracting company. They needed painters. He asked me, do I have any experience? Have I ever painted anything before my life? Just so happened that one grueling summer, my uncle had me paint his garage, and that was enough, right? That's usually how it goes with apprenticeship work. I was paid $8 an hour, and I didn't know what the heck I was doing. But I gained skills. I learned, I developed the talent. I enjoyed the work. And soon enough, I grew and developed the talent of what you would call a journeyman painter. Now, these terms, apprenticeship and journeyman, and apprentice and journeyman and craftsman, these are old terms. They've been around for a really long time. Our industry is over 500 years old. It developed in the Guild Age. And, in that Guild Age, you had this structure of apprenticeship, journeymanship, and becoming a master. And the way that it would work in the old days is you would be an apprentice from a very young age. You would work for room and board under the tutelage of a master craftsman. They would teach you until you came of age, and then you would enter into your journeyman years, and you would be a journeyman for no longer than 3 years and a day. And it's at that point that you would go from master to master, honing your skill and developing it so that you could one day become a master craftsman yourself. And this is a journey that I went through. I spent several years in kind of that journeyman status. I was not a union painter, but from a practice standpoint, from a standpoint of getting the training, putting in the time, developing as a craftsperson, I did my journeyman years, and I ended up working for this company, and right around the Great Recession, my boss, with the economic climate that it was, he decided, you know what, I gotta fold. I'm gonna go to business school, and he said to Orlando, if I get any more work, I'll pass it along to you, and that's how I started my own company. That's where it began, and that's where I began my journey as a master painter. And I'll tell you, without, I don't want to be too boastful of this, but I'm pretty good at painting. I do have an art background, so I went to art school, and I took a lot of that training that I learned in art to become a fantastic painter. And I started to grow my company. And I think that a lot of people in our industry kind of start that way. They stumble upon it, they work for a few companies, and then eventually they see a ceiling at the company that they're at, and they decide, you know what, it's time to hang my shingle. It's time to break out on my own. There are a lot of wonderful, hardworking, talented master craftsmen and women in our industry, and this is the route that they typically take. Now, to grow from here, what's happening is they're trying to find jobs on their own. They're getting referrals. They're maybe trying to do a little bit of marketing, maybe a little paid advertising, and they're striving to grow their business on their own. A lot of times when it's just them, the word of mouth it's plenty to keep them busy all year long. And the fact of the matter is that they have to start looking for summer help. And so they end up taking on their own apprentice. And then you have kind of this like, master apprentice, Jedi Padawan kind of thing going on. In fact, most of the painting companies in our industry are comprised of this very model. The average company in our industry is 1.5 people, meaning that it's somebody who's darn good at painting and a summer helper. A lot of companies struggle to move beyond this stage, and there's a lot of reasons why they present. Some of them want to stay small. Some of them just can't find the help. The goal of this video here is to show you how, what is the structure? How do we go from point A to point Z when we are growing and scaling a team? What does that structure look like? Who do I need to hire in between, and what should I be thinking about? This applies both to independent paint contractors as it does for our guilds in the locations that we establish. And so every location that we establish, we're going to look for that master craftsman to lead out the effort of training and developing, nurturing our people. We're going to be looking for connections with salespeople that who we hire, and I'll get a little bit into that as we go. But we are following this model in all of the new guilds that we establish throughout the country. It all starts with that master and apprentice relationship. Now, the goal of the master craftsman is to train and teach their apprentice so that they can get to a level of a little bit of independence. And so once you have trained them, and in our company, the apprenticeship typically takes about a year, okay, to get to that point of being fully trained, right? We try to advance you pretty quickly. We also try to not take on so many different types of painting so that you can master the things that we do quicker. A lot of times companies will say yes to everything under the sun. As long as it doesn't have wheels, we'll paint it. And the hard part about that for people learning is that it might be 2 months before they come back to something they did on their first day. And so we try to keep it simple. by narrowing our focus, honing in on specific types of painting. In our case, it's the repaint, interior repaint specifically. And so our people are able to gain those skills pretty quickly and advance through their apprenticeship within the first year. So once they get through that point of becoming, once they graduate from their apprenticeship, then they are granted that title of journeyman. And that is going to be a 3-year and 1-day commitment. And we bring on another apprentice, right? That master brings on another apprentice. And then we have that journeyman who's able to keep working. And for a while, we'll probably work together as a crew of 3. There are pros and cons to increasing the size of your crew. When you're working as a crew of 3, that gives the master a little bit more time to maybe go do some estimates or run materials while the other 2 are working. And you have a little bit of safety in that journeyman is fully trained. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to have that journeyman train the apprentice just yet. We want to make sure that the journeyman is still continuing to develop good habits and that they are free and clear to be productive and working. Because what you don't want is for that journeyman who has just come out of their apprenticeship to essentially be burdened with training somebody, because what you have happening is you have 2 workers on one task doing it slowly and poorly, and that becomes pretty expensive pretty quickly. And so it's really best for that master craftsman to continue to take on that role of trainer and let the journeyman continue to practice and hone their skills over the coming years. So then once you've got that second apprentice who's trained up and they're ready to become a journeyman, now you can promote that first journeyman to become a crew leader, and then you can send those 2 off to do jobs on their own. That's going to be great practice and training for future, for future things that are coming their way. And then you bring on another apprentice, and now you've got 2. You're able to do 2 jobs at once. We're able to tackle some of those bigger projects. So again, what is the ideal crew size here? Well, the hard part here is that it's all about understanding the job size. Because if you were to put 2 people in a bathroom, it's probably too tight of a space. It's not enough space. So you got to put 1 person in that bathroom. You get a medium-sized bedroom, yeah, maybe 2 people is fine, but 3 people is going to be too much. You get a bigger open space, maybe 3 people is great, but what is that 4th person going to do? You're going to have to send them to another part of the house. The hard part is that the more people that you put onto a crew, a single crew, the more opportunity there is for social loafing. And social loafing is a killer for productivity. It's when you got 2 guys who like to cut up and they're in separate sides of the house and they, or think of a joke that they want to tell the other guy, and so they walk all the way across the house to tell that joke. Social loafing will kill your productivity. We want people to have fun while they work, but we don't want them to loaf. And so when you have that bigger crew size on a team, it can become really difficult to remain efficient. You also get into situations where you're finishing different parts at different times, and you have people sitting around because they're done, and you either have to send them home or they're going to be social loafing, right? And so sending them home isn't great for them because they need to make a certain hourly, they have to make their money. They have to make enough money to feed their family and take care of themselves. And so if you aren't careful about crew size, it can get kind of out of control. When you have larger projects, what I recommend teaming up into smaller crews of 2 and splitting up the project into halves or parts. And you might have 2 crew leaders that are going to have to come together and coordinate. But let's say, you've got an upstairs and a downstairs. Crew 1 is upstairs, crew 2 is downstairs, and you find that cutoff and you isolate those teams. You'll get the job done faster, But if it's treated like it's two separate jobs, even if that first crew finishes the upstairs first, send them off to the next job, get them out of there. Okay. Crews of two, in my opinion, are some of the most effective and efficient combinations. And you can, if you have kind of a modular approach to how you're putting your teams together, you can mix and match and tackle bigger projects with multiple crews, or split them up and have have them in different areas. The big thing to note here is just that when you have more people on a team, social loafing is the biggest thing to watch out for. And then also, if you have a large team, what ends up happening is whoever that leader is, often they stop being able to produce themselves because they have so many people under them that they just become a manager, and they become pure overhead. And because our model is get the work, do the work, we're always looking for things that are going to be pure revenue producing. Making a sale, that's revenue producing. Putting paint on the wall, that's revenue producing. Managing people and not producing, that's pure overhead. And unless you have, other systems in place, you just got to be careful of that. Okay. And so in our system, we're really trying to avoid the amount of middle managers because the overhead costs often doesn't justify the output that you get from having that overhead position. So now what we do is we just kind of continue with this model here. We've grown our crew. We've got 2 people going out there, and now we're going to add more crews, and we're going to look for a point to where we can hire a color designer. A number of years ago, I had kind of an epiphany, and this is the model that I've essentially always followed. I had a situation where I had a painter who she was great, loved her, she did great work, but she and her husband were trying to start their family, and finally the happy day came, and she comes to me and says, I don't feel comfortable on ladders. I don't feel good around dust. I think I'm going to have to quit. And I thought to myself, oh gosh, I don't want to lose you. And so I said, well, let's think about this a little bit. And knowing that she came from art school, she had a BFA in fine arts painting. I knew she had a good eye for color. I said, well, what if I teach you how to do sales and estimating, and you help our clients with color? That was something that I had been doing for years, and because of my background in art. And so I thought, well, let's train it. As it turns out, I found it significantly easier to train somebody how to do estimating than it was to do production, than to paint. And it actually became more beneficial for me to train and teach people how to estimate quickly so that I could let them focus on the sales. I stepped away from the sales and focused on management, leading my team, because project management is really difficult, and it's something that you really have to stay on top of. And so this is the model that I followed. You can hire sales, regular salespeople, but I actually have a tremendous amount of luck in recruiting people with art backgrounds and interior design, and especially interior designers, to come in and train them on our sales programs and teach them how to estimate. And this is the model they follow. And so as you are building your team, you can really rely on this model and duplicate it and replicate it. The number of crews that a master craftsman can handle is it's really it's going to be up to the individual and their individual capacity. Some are going to have more capacity to project manage multiple crews, where others, they're going to tap out at a handful of crews. It's up to you to do the math to figure out the optimal ratio of workers to the master craftsman. You could also, as you're growing, you could also kind of divide the responsibilities of the master craftsman and have multiple masters. You'd have one master who's more responsible for project management, while the other is more responsible for training. That way you keep your systems more standardized, you keep the crews trained in the same way. And so that when you are plugging them into independent crews, you have people who are doing things the same way, and they're not, having to adjust and recalibrate because, well, that's not what Bill taught me to do. But then you're like, well, I was trained by Bob, and you have different things going on. And so this really is the model. You have your master who's going to project manage, maintain training, build and develop those crews, keep those crews small. 2 people is optimal. If you've got a big project, put multiple crews on and divide the job out. And then as you are ready to focus and focus your attention on other things, what's going to happen is you're going to get too busy for those sales, and you're going to want to hire a designer to come in and help you with those sales. Another reason why I recommend a designer is because a lot of the independent folks are already doing it. You might have established a relationship with a local interior designer to help provide color consultations to your clients. You're still doing the sales, and then you're connecting them with a client to do the color. Well, why not approach them and see if they would be willing to learn how to estimate for you, and you'll give them a commission when you do, and now you've got yourself a sales rep. This is the model that we follow at Craftsman Painter, and I think is as good as model as any. So as you are growing this team, you're going to get to a point where your time and your ability to handle it all, you can't. And so you're going to have to promote those people into a position, and you're going to take on more of an administrative role as the administrative director. And as a director, I want you to pay attention to that word director. Okay. This means handling your vendor relationships, outsourcing certain needs. Okay. If you need to outsource your HR strategy, that's your responsibility to find a capable partner that can help you, with things like payroll and, your workers' comp and your insurances and, payroll taxes and all of that. If you're going to work with a marketing agency, that's your role to interface with them and to, report on the efficacy of their efforts. You want your direct reports are going to be your salespeople and your project managers, or the color designer and the master craftsman. You want them to be reporting to you. You don't want to necessarily be doing their job for them or micromanaging them. This is a place too where, as the director, you're jumping into a strong leadership role. And what I will tell you going forward in this class, leadership is going to be a huge part of your job. And if you're not prepared to develop as a leader, then you're not going to be prepared to grow. You're going to stall out, and you're going to plateau where you're at, and you won't take things to the next step. And as I speak across the country and I talk to different contractors and I get to know different people in different spaces, one thing that I can tell you with absolute assurance is that leadership is the great stumbling block that most of these companies are facing, and why they are not growing. One of the things that people will say to me is like, "This is great. I'd love to grow my team and business and, produce more work. The work is certainly out there, but I can't find good help. Nobody wants to work." That I hear that a lot. And so you hear people talking about, the labor shortage. Well, let's talk about the labor shortage. There are some economic realities here. On one hand, we've got the baby boomer generation retiring 10,000 people a day. And they, at one point in recent history, maybe the last 5-10 years, they made up 42% of trade workers. Meanwhile, only 3% of young people are considering the trades as a viable solution. A lot of people are relying on migrant labor to supply the labor, but the U.S. has standards and crackdowns on that. And so, where does the labor come? What is the issue? Well, when that curmudgeon of a person in my talks comes up and says, young people don't want to work, nobody wants to work, with 100% assurance, I can tell them, and I do tell them this, it's not that people don't want to work. It's just that they don't want to work for you. They don't like when I say that. But that is the reality. People who are great leaders, people who are magnetic and who treat people well, who are developed as a leader, they don't experience the labor shortage. They don't participate in it. They're able to find the workers. They're able to build the team, and they recognize that every generation wants to work. There are people who want to work in every single generation. They also realize that if they're going to capture that generation, that they have to develop themselves a leader and develop a company, build a company where people want to work. So to help you develop yourself as a leader, I'm going to turn to the 6 domains of leadership, which was developed by professors at Duke, researchers at Duke. And the idea here is that leadership is complex. There are multiple components to it. If we focus on one and we neglect the others, then we're only going to see part success. And according to this research, there are 6 domains that we have to learn as leaders in order to be truly effective. And at the base of this pyramid, it starts with things like your personal leadership, who you are as a person, what you project to others, relational leadership, how you relate to others, contextual, which is the context of who we are as a company and what we're aiming to do. You need to be inspirational. And a lot of leaders in this industry aren't ready to inspire their team. They think it's silly. They think it's, beneath them. They think that their people don't need inspiration. It's not true. People need to be inspired. Your people need support, and they need to know that they have a responsible leader. So let's go into each one of these domains of the pyramid, starting with personal. So personal, again, it's that preparing and projecting who you are. Your team, whether it's a team that you're leading, under the banner of Craftsman Painter, or it's an independent team that you've put together. A lot of the way that you do things, a lot of the culture, the attitudes, the spirit, the enthusiasm that your team feels, it comes down to your personality. You're going to build a team that really aligns with your personality, whether you're intentional about it or not. If you're not intentional about it, then it's going to develop around your worst unhinged personality traits. But if you're intentional and you prepare and become a better leader, a better human being, then your team and your team culture is going to rally around those ideas, and they're going to like you. And people stick around for people who they like. So personal leadership is all about preparing and projecting who you are. Then we've got relational leadership. This is about showing concern and understanding for others. It's having empathy. It's understanding that when you are interviewing somebody, that that when they're sitting across the table, that you are thinking about their needs more than yours, because that's what they're here for. They're changing jobs. They're maybe entering into the workforce for the first time, or just making a major change because something in their life wasn't right. That's why people change jobs. They change jobs because they weren't happy at the last place that they were at. And so if you understand that, then you are going to have a key to finding and bringing people on. If you're getting rejected, again, it's not that people don't want to work. It's that they just don't like what you got going on. They don't think that they can build a relationship with you. They don't think that they can trust you. It's not about being friends. It's about connecting. That's what it's about, relational leadership. Then there's contextual leadership. This is about clarifying who we are as a company and how we work together. At Craftsman Painter, we're really specific about this. We know who we are. It's in the name of our company, Craftsman Painter. Our painters are craftsman painters. That's who they are. It's our identity. And how we work together is all wrapped up in this sprint system. Everything that we teach and profess with sprint, this is how we work together. Contextual leadership also provides the idea of why we're doing this to begin with. This is another area at Craftsman Painter where we really know why we're doing it. We know that for our homeowners, those customers, their house is their most prized and cherished possession. And when it doesn't look good, when it doesn't feel good, when it's dingy, when it's grubby, nothing is right. Nobody's happy in the house. Everybody feels low. They feel broke. They don't feel good about life. And it is our job to help them feel better about those things. And that's what we do. That is what we do. We help them do that. And so in the context of the work that we're doing, we know who we are. We're craftsman painters. How we work together is sprint. Why we're doing it is to help people love their life and make a difference. If you don't have those things dialed in as a company, people aren't going to accept your job offer. I've had people say to me specifically, the reason that I'm here is because of all of those things that you talked about. Then there's the inspirational leadership. This is giving meaning and enthusiasm to what we're doing. Every dog has their day. The work can be grueling. The work can be kind of tough and hard sometimes. There are days where it's really hot. There are days where it's really cold. There's days where you come home dirty and a mess. There are times where the customer is a pain in the butt. You know this. You've experienced this. In those days where your team is feeling like they can't move forward, they're going to look to you for inspiration. They're going to look to you to remind them how important their work is. And your attitude, the level of enthusiasm that you carry, is going to make a huge difference. If you look at Pete Rose, for example, Pete Rose, he's well known. I mean, everybody knows that name. What were his stats like? They weren't the greatest, but man, when he rounded those bases, he showed enthusiasm, and that enthusiasm was contagious, and it contributed to the team being enthusiastic about what they were doing, and it created a winning attitude. If you think inspiration is silly, leadership might not be for you. If you're going to be a leader, you got to be prepared to make the big speech and inspire your people. Then there's supportive. If I'm thinking about how inspirational leadership and supportive leadership work together. I would say that inspirational leadership is about raising the ceiling and raising the heights and the sights of your people, but supportive relationship is about raising the floor. If you don't provide the adequate resources and the feedback and protections so that your people feel supported and heard, you're going to fail them as a leader. They're not going to want to work for you. Providing resources is about making sure that they have uniforms, making sure that they have adequate tools, making sure that when they do good work, that they know that their good work is appreciated. And when they're struggling, that you are providing them with additional training to improve their work, to get better. The protection is really important when you're employing people, because if people didn't have risk meters and they weren't concerned for the future, then I think everybody would probably be an entrepreneur. A lot of people choose to get to be employed because they want a little more assurance that their finances are going to be looked after, that they're going to know where the work is coming from, that they feel that assurance. You have to make sure that you're supporting your people with enough work that they can feel protected, especially with regards to their finances. It takes a special person to take on the more entrepreneurial types of roles. You know, for our amazing uh, color designers and painting reps that are out there, you know, selling on revenue share, we recognize that you're wired a little different. You have a little bit more courage in being able to go out and find work, and that excites you, and the thrill of winning a deal, that's important to you. We also understand that if you're in our system, it's because you want help. You don't want to have to take on all of the responsibilities of business ownership. You don't want to deal with all of the administrative headaches that come with it, the HR, the payroll, the taxes. You want to go out and serve your customer and do it on your terms. And so, you know, for us, we're supporting our people in different ways. For our painters, we're making sure that they have work. For our color designers, we're making sure that all of the business stuff is taken care of so that they can be a strong independent worker while having some help. That's more of the technical side of support. But there is an emotional side of supporting your people. Everybody's going to have a bad day. Everybody's going to have personal stuff that they're going through. And being a supportive leader is showing that you care about people's problems to the degree that you're willing to show empathy, support, guidance, mentorship. Doesn't mean solving their problems for them, but what it does mean is being in their corner. The tip of the pyramid here is being a responsible leader. It's modeling ethics, and it's providing balance to your company, to your people. When I think of ethics and balance, I think of two different things, and maybe I'll attack ethics first. Ethics is really about doing the right thing. I remember an instance where I was at a customer's house, and I wrote out the bid for them, and I indicated that we were going to be painting the trim. And when we say trim, that's kind of a shorthand for all of the woodwork that is going to be in the trim color. So that includes windows and doors and baseboard and door frames and all that. And she wasn't sure if we had included the doors in the proposal. And so when that came into question, my crew member came to me and asked me, well, are we doing the doors? Is it included? Because usually it is when it says trim. He asked me if it was. Now, if I had not charged enough money for that job, and let's say that we were behind and I wasn't sure if we were going to be profitable on that job, I think for some people, this question might have put them in an ethical dilemma. Because on one hand, if they tell the truth, then they risk the job not being profitable. On the other hand, if they don't tell the truth, then maybe they save themselves on labor, but now they're modeling unethical behavior. So what do you do? Well, you have to prevent that situation by charging enough money for your jobs so that making the right decision is an easy one. Always, always be ethical in your business. When you model ethical behavior, your people will follow. They won't do bad things behind your back. They won't steal. They won't cut corners. You have to model that behavior because when you show and demonstrate exceptions to your own rules, the exception ends up becoming the rule. Now let's go over to balance. Balance is about fairness. It's about equity. It's about devising a plan in a program within your company so that your people are paid and fair and that they're so that your people are paid fairly and treated equitably. Being treated equitably doesn't necessarily mean the same, in particular when it comes to production. You're going to have people who are more productive than others. And if they are paid the same or less than people who are more productive, that is not going to feel equitable. And therefore, they're going to leave. They're going to go find somebody who's willing to pay them what they're worth. And so you have to be fair, you have to be balanced. That is about responsible leadership. When you do this right, when you are developed as a leader, when you improve yourself as a leader, you have a lot of great things to gain. When you focus on your personal leadership, that makes you more credible to your people. And when you develop those relationships, your people will trust you more. When you provide context to who you are as a people and to why you're doing the work that you do and how you do it, you're going to build a community that you want to be a part of. I see so many business owners trying to turn their painting company into a passive business asset, as if they can just go vacation 12 months out of the year and come back and have more money. If you're in this business, I do not believe that it is a passive business. It is an active business. And if you are here, you need to focus on building community, being a part of the team, caring about those people, inspiring them and leading them. I'm not saying don't go on vacation, but there are other ways to make money that are passive, that are not a service-based business, and you're going to have an easier time and a better time doing it if you go pursue those things that are actually passive. If you're here, it's an active business. Be active, be part of it. Find the thing that is going to create the most joy and fulfillment in your life so that you can actually enjoy the work that you do and it isn't stressful to you. If your business is such that you want to create a passive system so that you can go, travel around the country, I ask you, what are you running from? Why are you trying to get away from your business? I get that we all need a little break. We need to vacation from time to time. But if that's the purpose of why you're building a business, I would suggest that you find another venture to invest your time and money into, one that's a little bit more that is actually passive. This is an active business where we're building community. If you're not prepared to be an inspirational and supportive leader, get out, move over for the people who want to be. If you could be an inspirational leader, if you could develop the muscle to go give that big speech and rally the troops and get them fighting through the hard times. What's going to happen is you're going to get people who aspire to new heights. You're going to get people who level up and who take things to the next stage, because inspiration yields aspiration. And when you support your people, when you give them the things that they need, you're going to find that you have people who really have a lot of initiative and drive. If they feel supported, they're going to run through a brick wall for you, right? That's the initiative. Those things on the bottom, those, the aspiration, initiative, credibility, trust, community, those are the benefits. Those are the good things that you get as a leader. And the cost lives at the tip of the pyramid. It's the stewardship. The price is your stewardship. You are a steward. That means that you are responsible for these folks, that you have to be there to take care of them. That's what good stewards do. That's what responsible leaders do. So I'll give you a look at these circles here. We've got stewardship, aspiration, initiative, credibility, trust, and community. All beautiful things that come as a result of developing yourself as a leader. Okay, so I want to talk next about how to build that team. So we've gone through creating a structure, a path, and a plan on how to build and grow that team. And we've talked about developing yourself as a leader who people will want to be a part of. But now, where do we find those people? Well, we want to look to our community. And community is a word that we're going to use over and over and over again. When I think of community, I think of a group of people with similar traits and characteristics. And so a practice that I go through when I'm trying to figure out who I want to bring into my community and under my stewardship, I look back to the traits and characteristics that we care about as a company. We care about people who are fearlessly authentic. We want to spread kindness like confetti. And we have a nature and a disposition to not stop working until we're proud of it, right? And we'll say that, don't stop until you're proud. It's not that we want people to overwork. It's that we want to find people who are seeking mastery and who want to get better. And so where do we find people like that? Well, the thing is that people tend to, what do they say? Birds of a feather flock together. So we start with our existing crew and we look for people that they know who they would want to work with. Nobody wants to work side by side with somebody who they have to drag along or who isn't going to be a fun person to work with. And so your people are great sources. And some contractors out there have really been able to tap into groups that are very well connected. They've got cousins and brothers and sisters and all kinds of people that they know that are looking for jobs. Arts communities tend to stick together, and so you have people who have artistic talent and they're good for learning the work and learning how to do the learning the quality and all of that, and they have strong communities. But if you're having a hard time finding people through those channels just kind of organically, I always start with a good job posting. I'm searching online, and in order to find those good people, you have to create a job post that's going to speak to them, one that is going to call out those traits that they have and that they aspire to, things that they want to be a part of. And if you don't have those clearly defined for yourself and your team, then you're going to struggle to call out those symbols. What I kind of look at it like the bat signal. When you put out the bat signal and you see that bat logo, uh, Batman shows up and the criminals run away, right? And that is what our communal traits do. That's what our characteristics do. The ones that we're looking for, if we put it out there and we address it right there in the job ad, the people who the Batmans, they're gonna come and find it, and the ones that we don't want, they're gonna look at that and say, I want nothing. I want nothing to do with it. And so a lot of recruiting begins with having a really strong job ad. The process for recruiting goes like this. First, we start with a really well-written job post that speaks to solving the problems of the job seeker, not just the problems of the company. It gives context to who we are and why we do it, and it invites them to look into our culture, look into who we are as a company. It invites them to examine and think and consider, is this something that they want to be a part of? Then, if they do, we have them apply. Now, if they came from a referral, like they have a friend, who works here and they want to, we're still going to send that friend to the job post to apply online. We want everybody to go through the same system so that they can be onboarded in the same way, so that they can go through the same qualification process, and so that it's equitable and fair. Everybody has to go through it. You can't just hire somebody because, Tony's cousin does good work, and so, yeah, let's bring him on. You have to vet them. You have to go through this process. So send them to the job posting, have them apply. And then I like to do an initial interview. It doesn't take more than 15, 20 minutes. It can be a phone call, or I prefer a video call. And what we'll do is I'll give them a quick, spiel about who we are and all that. But what I tell them is that this interview is more of a reverse interview where they are able to ask questions about us. And my goal is for them to come to the conclusion that this is the right fit or the wrong fit. And if it's the right fit, we can continue and then I'll interview. But if it's the wrong fit, then they'll know it's not for them and they can bow out. And so I'll ask them maybe, all right, what's your background and what stood out to you about the job posting? And then I'll turn the time over to them and I'll let them ask as many questions as they want until they feel comfortable enough, with that interview to make a decision on the next step. If they're interested, then we move to a formal interview. This can be done in person or over video. I would not recommend doing it over phone. You want to see people. You want to be able to check their body language and communicate with nonverbal cues. So either video or in person. And this is where you ask the questions. And I design those questions to pull out key characteristic traits and how they respond in situations where our critical actions would be tested. I'm less interested in kind of close-ended answers, yes or no responses. I'm less interested in questions that are asking them what would they do, and I'm more interested in questions that pull out what they have done in the past. If they can tell a story about what they did, then I can better understand what they would do in the future. Then after that interview is done, if all things are looking good, then we do a skills test. We bring them out to a job. We give them a small amount of work, and we time them. We using our point system. We know what the quantity of work is, and we know that if they're going to complete this in a certain amount of time, we know where to place them in terms of their skill level. When they come out for that skills test, I actually put that on the crew leader or the master craftsman to make that final decision. My goal is to only send him or her great candidates. So realistically, they should be able to say yes to anybody that I send to them. But if for whatever reason they say, no, this isn't the one, I'm going to respect that decision and I'm probably going to turn them down. Very rarely will I say, hey, I hired them anyway. If I do need to hire them, or I do need to if I feel like I need to hire that person, I'm going to go back to that master craftsman. I'm going to have a conversation and explain why. And if there's anything that they, you know, detected, or that I didn't see that I should be made aware of, I want to know it. I want to know it then, because I want to be respectful. And, you know, nobody wants somebody put on their team that, you know, they don't have a good feeling about. And so, like I said, more often than not, if the master craftsman says no, I'm going to trust their judgment. But every now and then, I will go back and say, hey, we need to rethink this. So let's talk about our onboarding process. I think a lot of people don't spend enough time on onboarding their people. Onboarding is a long process. It's not like a half day, you know, seminar. Um, there's significant research to show that a longer onboarding process keeps people around longer, and turnover is very expensive for a company. Most leaders underestimate how much turnover costs them, but if you think about the cost to train somebody and how long it takes to actually get them profitable, it becomes very expensive if you lose them prematurely. And so a strong onboarding process that provides consistent feedback, consistent support, you know, all of the elements of the leadership pyramid, that is going to help you. The other pitfall that I see leaders, you know, making mistakes on with terms with when it comes to onboarding, is that their process is inconsistent. They come up with a solution, they come up with a process, and it works well for a while. Maybe their first round of hiring, they stick to it. And then after a while, they get lazy. They don't do it. They skip steps. And that's a big mistake, because you're going to lose your people if you don't onboard them well. My go-to strategy for this is to canonize my onboarding process as much as possible. There's a lot of information in onboarding that's repetitive, and I think that's why a lot of leaders fall off on doing it, because they feel like a broken record. But you're not a broken record to that new hire. And so what I'll do is I'll create video content that is helpful and meaningful, and, you know, have them go through it. This session right here is part of that process. It's part of the training. It's part of the ongoing work to keep our company unified in our systems and processes. And so creating a video series, look, it doesn't need to be hyper produced. You can turn your phone on yourself and hit record, upload it to YouTube, create a playlist, and say, watch these videos before you show up for work, right? And then we'll have a discussion. We'll talk about them. If you wanted to get real fancy, you could take those videos and turn it into an email campaign and put your new hire in it. And every day, put a video out so that they can watch, you know, 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there, and get acclimated to how you do things. When you create a video of it, it cements the process in stone, and you just go back to it. That's what makes it canon. Go back to the basics, back to the basics, back to the basics. And if your basics evolve, which they're prone to do, then just record a new video and replace the old one. Okay, it doesn't have to be hyper produced. Just make it, get it out there, and then give your team those processes. There are purely logistical things when it comes to onboarding. So like getting your I-9s and getting them, you know, enrolled in your payroll system, and you know, all that kind of stuff. There are softwares out there that handle that. There are also services that handle that too. You can work with an HR company, and that will, you know, facilitate things really well. You know, on our end, we have a department where, you know, we can bring in people. We can bring in outside people and have those things handled. It's all fairly automated. We just have to have the person entered into the system, and then they fill out their information, and then we verify their identification, and then we move on to training. Okay, keep that onboarding consistent. Automate the things that you can automate. Canonize the thing that you can canonize. The main idea here is to make it so that when a new person comes on, you can focus your attention on establishing that relational leadership, right? You know, in that interview process, hopefully you've communicated what kind of person you are. You've hopefully provided some context to how your company runs, but using those videos is going to really greatly improve your ability to communicate the context for how you operate and who you are. And that gives you the ability and the opportunity to focus on building that one-on-one relationship and that connection, and pairing people to mentors within your company so that they feel a connection to the community. So now we want to get them trained. When we're training people, we want to follow a model so that we can have consistent training throughout. We follow the EDGE model, EDGE. It stands for Educate, Demonstrate, Guide, Enable. And we'll take our key skills, and for the sake of this video, we've simplified what those skills are. But in our full training worksheet, those skills are broken down by different things that you have to do. But the idea is that for each key skill that they need to be trained on, that they need to follow this process. First, you need to educate them on what the skill is and how to do it. You might even include why you do it. There are certain things that it's like, I don't know why we do it this way, and nobody told me why, and so then they start trying out different things that don't work, and when you can educate them on the way to do it, it's a shortcut for doing it right. I like videos for educating my team. In fact, the PCA has tons of training videos for the basics that are really great, and they follow industry standards, and they're going to produce a properly painted surface. And so I educate the team with videos first, and then I have demonstrations. Those demonstrations are in person, and they are performed by the master craftsman, the person who is training. Again, we want our systems to be canonized. And so that source of truth, that master who does things the way the company does, they've mastered those techniques, then they're going to demonstrate how to do it. And so let's say that they're demonstrating how to tape off baseboards. Well, they're going to sit there and they're going to take the tape and they're going to apply the tape to the baseboards. They're going to do it slowly first, and they're going to explain how it works as they go. They're going to show all the little nuances, all the things that have become muscle memory that you don't think of because you've done it so often. They're going to explain the nuance of how they do it and why. Then they're going to show them how to do it in real speed, so you have some context for how fast it's supposed to go. And then you turn around and you hand the new apprentice the roll of tape. And then that begins the guiding phase. You now want to kind of hover over their shoulder and guide them through the first few stages. The guiding, it takes a little while. And over time, you stop hovering over their shoulders, and you start to leave them be a little bit. And then you come back and evaluate. And if they need to redo something, you have them redo it. And you might jump back into demonstration mode to show them where they went wrong and how to avoid that. And you just kind of do that back and forth until they need less guidance and less guidance and less guidance. And eventually you mark them off as enabled. And that means that you are enabling them to perform the task on their own without direct supervision. The goal is to get them to that level. Why? Because we want our apprentices to progress through the stages of being a journeyman to being a master craftsman and all the way to becoming an administrative director. We want them to be able to progress in their field. And if they aren't able to progress, they're going to leave. And so we have to have a plan for continual improvement and growth as for the longer that they work in the company. Now, what I want to do here is explain productivity. I'm going to use this chart. Productivity it's difficult, and I'm going to use some graphs. And so I want you to hang in there with me. When somebody's producing, there is the quality of craftsmanship on one axis, and then there is the speed at which they're able to perform on another axis. And in general, the longer that you are able to dedicate towards craftsmanship, the higher the quality will remain. And so the issue with that is that the longer that you work, the more it costs you. And so if we were to look at this graph here, and I'll go solo view for that. If we were to look at this graph, and we see on the vertical axis here, quality, where quality is low at the bottom and quality is high at the top. And then on the horizontal axis, we see speed, where on the one end it's fast and where on the other end it's slow. And then that line down the middle, going uphill, it's the cost per unit. What I mean by cost per unit is if you have a unit of production, i.e. a door, right? That's a single unit. If you have a square foot of wall surface, or you have a linear foot of trim that needs to be painted, those are all units of measurement. And what we need to do is we need to kind of simplify things and abstract all those different units of measurement into a single unit, which we'll call a point. And so then we take our cost per unit, and that exists on this linear curve here, where the higher we go on the quality axis, the longer the work is going to take. And so if we have a painter who is working, and we're represented by this pink line, here we have this example. If you want high quality, it's going to take them a lot of time, but it's going to cost you more money to get there. Whereas if they move much faster, the quality is going to be lower, but it's going to cost you less. We are constantly battling the quality versus speed within a paint job. It's always a balance. It's always a teeter-totter. And for each job, there's going to be an acceptable level of quality. And if we're able to find that cross-section of where cost per unit matches the acceptable quality level, this is called the point of cost minimization. As a company owner, we're seeing that the work is costing us at the lowest amount of money possible while maintaining an acceptable quality standard. And so if our painter is able to hit this axis point, we're in really good shape. And if the acceptable quality is higher, then we want our painter to be able to adapt. But we know that if the cost of the job is going to be higher, then what we charge ends up being higher. If the quality is higher, then we know that our painters are going to have to take more time to do the work. Now, there's one trick to this model right here, and that is that you have different people at different skill levels. You have people who are at the very beginning of their journey as apprentices. You have people who are in their journeyman years, and you have craftsmen who are really high quality individuals. And for those apprentices, a lot of times what you'll see is in order for them to hit that acceptable quality marker, they have to take longer than that minimum uh, cost point. And so the goal with the apprentices is to give them enough support and training so that they can increase their talent and their skill, so that they can increase their speed while maintaining quality. And as they progress as journeyman level painters, you'll see that they're able to produce they're able to produce that acceptable quality level while taking less time. But if they're taking less time, you don't want to pay them less. That's not fair. And so, because they're producing more, they're still going to cost about the same, but they're going to get it done in less time. Likewise, with the craftsman level painter, they're going to get that project done in less time, but your cost is going to raise. Ideally, we figure out how to keep our costs the same while paying the people more for their added productivity. And we will go into this in this course. So let's talk about cost per unit of production. Now, each of your people is going to have a base hourly rate, or some type of a financial metric compared to time. The challenge with that is that different people produce at different speeds. But for the purpose of this illustration, what we're going to do is we're going to take all of the units. There are different units that you could be producing in. You could be producing in linear feet or square feet, or a number of doors or number of windows, however it is. We're gonna abstract that and turn it into a single unit of cost. And we're going to set that unit of production to the minimum wage of your company. Now, a lot of companies have a minimum wage, whether you know it or not. There's, of course, the federal minimum wage. We all know about the federal minimum wage. And there's a lot of debate. Depending on your political persuasion, you might think that there shouldn't be any minimum wage. You might think that the minimum wage should be $15, $20 an hour. A lot of that is ideological. The reality is that in your labor market, there's going to be a bottom number that people are willing to work for. If they can't get, if they can't get paid what they need to at your place, and they can get paid more somewhere else, then they're probably going to do that. That isn't always categorically true. There are other ways to compensate people, and there are other reasons to, that people would want to stay working for you. But at some point, if they can't pay for the food on their table and they can't make rent, it's just not going to work. And so what I tell people is that you have to create a minimum wage for your company, or create a minimum wage for your particular location, because that's going to vary across country depending on cost of living and depending on the local job market. And so what you're going to do is you're going to set that unit of production to the minimum wage of your company. So let's say that the minimum wage of your company is $15 an hour. And I know some of you watching this are going to think that's very low. And some of you are going to think, oh, I might need to bump it up a little bit. I'm going to tell you, there's really not a true right or wrong here. A lot of it depends on the factors of your local economy, the local job market, the cost of living in your area. So for this example, we're just gonna set it at $15 an hour. Let's say you hire a new apprentice, and that's what you are going to pay them, $15 an hour. It's also safe to assume that your brand new apprentice is probably going to be one of the slowest people on your team. And so because of that, we're going to kind of calibrate our system around that minimum cost and that minimum production output. And we're going to take that unit and we're going to call it a point. Okay. And a point can reflect any scope of work in a house. And so if a point is worth $15, then an apprentice painter who's being paid $15 per hour has to produce 1 point for every hour that they work. Therefore, 1 point on the high end is going to take 60 minutes. But on the low end, you might have a craftsman painter who's at least twice as fast as that new apprentice, and they're going to do and complete that same task in about 30 minutes. And so we set our point equal to 30 to 60 minutes worth of labor. Then what we'll do is we'll create a track for each of our levels of worker. And we'll tell each worker that they're responsible for hitting a certain number of points each day. And so that brand new apprentice, if they're going to work 7 hours in the day, we're going to subtract for lunch and breaks, of course, they're responsible for 7 points in the 7 hours that they work. When they start increasing their productivity, when they get better at their job, better at their work, we're going to graduate them to a level 2 apprentice and hold them responsible for producing 8 points in a day or in a 7-hour period. That is going to increase their pay, as it duly should, and it increases their responsibility. Then we keep going. Apprentice 3, 9 points. Journeyman 1, 10 points. Journeyman 2, 11 points, so on and so forth until we get to the master craftsman, who should be able to produce 15 or more points in a single day. What this ladder allows us to do is it allows us to give our people something to strive for. Personal achievement and attainment, mastery, those kind of things, very important to people in their careers. This is what motivates people. These are things that motivate people to reach new levels, to achieve. It's part of what's called acquired needs theory. People have a desire and a drive to achieve and reach new levels. But we also have to take into account this thing called expectancy theory, which is when people are performing a certain task, they're going to expect some kind of just reward. And the value that they provide above and beyond, they expect it to provide more of a return. And so if the people are producing more points on a daily basis, they should be making more money. That way, let's bring in another theory, equity theory. When they see that somebody is earning more money, they know that it is because they are producing more points. And if they are not producing those points, then the expectation is that there is some form of justice that is meted out. And that is true in the form of performance reviews. So you can kind of see how having these levels, it actually gives people something to aspire to. Where a lot of these small companies, I think, fall short is that the individual comes in and they see the top and they see that their employer, who they're working hand in hand with, they're pouring the paint on with them. They see that the ceiling is that person and they're standing right next to them. There's no room for them to grow and achieve. And so by just labeling the stages of progress, which are already there, they are already there. People progress in this fashion. By labeling them and rewarding them and adding increased responsibility, you're doing all kinds of great things to inspire this person to be motivated to achieve and to master their trade and to grow to new heights. Highly recommend implementing this into your business if you're watching this as an independent, and if you are a member of Craftsman Painter, you know these things. This is how This is how we do things, and this is how you get paid. So here's the wage formula. I want to break down the wage formula, how this works out, because that's, the natural question. If I get how, you might be sitting there thinking, I understand how the apprentice, we've set their minimum wage to $15 in our company, and we're going to set the point value to $15 per point. So 60 minutes, they work for 60 minutes, they earn a point, they earn $15 per hour. Wonderful. Well, there's a formula that we can use to figure it out for the other people. And that's, you take the daily point goal divided by the hours that they're working in that day. You multiply that by the cost of your point, which we've set to the minimum wage, and that equals your hourly rate. And so as an example, we have, for example, that Craftsman 2 is going to be responsible for 14 points. And if they work 7 hours in a day, we divide it by 7. We multiply that by $15 per point, and that will give them a wage of $30 per hour, which is a pretty great wage for an employed worker. But again, when we're talking about equity theory, sometimes people are working their butts off and they are producing more. When do you reward them? When do you give them raises? When do you, how do you determine how they grow within it, right? If they hit 9 points in a day, does that mean you bump them up? Well, there's this thing called regression to the mean, which means that if somebody's having a good day and they're very productive, it's almost always going to be followed by an average day. And if somebody has a bad day, it's almost always going to be followed by an average day. It's regression to the mean or regression to the average. And so just because somebody had a bad day where they didn't hit their goal, maybe they had a goal of 10 points and they did 8, or maybe they had a great day and they did 14 points, that doesn't mean that they're ready to be bumped up or bumped down to the next level. You have to look at it a little bit more in aggregate and understand that maybe they had a great day. Awesome. Let's reward them for that. Maybe they had a bad day. Hey, everybody has a bad day from time to time. The last thing that we need when we're having a bad day is more punishment. We already know that we're not doing great. And so what we'll do is we'll institute a bonus system where we look at the 2-week sprint and we say, okay, you're an apprentice, brand new apprentice. You're responsible for 7 points every day. There are 10 working days in a sprint. That means you're responsible for 70 points over the course of the sprint. If you do 71 points, then we will give you an extra $15 for every point. 72 points, you got 2 extra points. That's $30, right? Extra on top of your wage. And so that gives our people an immediate reward for, for working hard and, putting in the work that week. What we found is that when you punish people on the reverse, so let's say they only did 65 points and they're supposed to hit 70. If you punish them for that by taking away money, then that has adverse effects. They start sacrificing the quality of the work just to get things done because they're stressed out about the money. And so, to eliminate that, because again, we want to incentivize quality as much as we can, or at least we want to protect quality as much as we can. Punishing them by taking away money is not the answer. We want them to feel safe and secure enough so that they can do a great job. And if a job, for whatever reason, sometimes it's not in your control as to why it's not doing well, they still need to get paid for the time that they show up, at least on their minimum on that minimum rate. What I find in models such as subcontracting, where the crew is paid a specific set amount, the problem with that model is that if for whatever reason that job didn't have enough money in it, or there were some unforeseen circumstances that you just aren't going to be able to get paid for, well, all of a sudden that pie shrinks and shrinks and shrinks, and they start cutting corners in order to make it financially. And if they don't make it financially, then you're gonna lose that crew. And how expensive is that going to be for you? And so either way, especially when you're employing people, we want to make sure that there's a safety net in place so that at the very least we can walk away with a good job and a happy customer, even if it wasn't as profitable as we really needed it to be. But if they go above and beyond, they're going to notice if they are not getting rewarded adequately for it. And so by applying this bonus systems, these bonus points, it actually allows them to get that little dopamine hit of getting a little bonus on their paycheck and something to strive for the next time. Now, when they start consistently hitting more points, that's when we know that they are ready for the next level. And so, for an apprentice, they're typically going to progress at a rate of doing their apprentice 1 within the first 3 months, getting to apprentice 2 or being an apprentice 2 in the 3 to 6 month range. And then from that 6 month to the first 12 months, they're usually in that apprentice 3 space. And the expectation is that by the end of that first year, that they are producing at a quality level and a production speed level that is commensurate with a journeyman 1. Typically, when they hit that journeyman 1, we're going to raise their base pay to that level and have them cool there for a while they're honing their skills and really mastering those solid principles. But because they are receiving bonuses for when they produce beyond, so that journeyman 1, for example, has a responsibility of 10 points per day. That's 100 points per sprint. If they hit 120 points per sprint, then they're going to get that extra money that they deserve because they work so hard and they maintain the quality. That's the key. Other fun things that you can do is, especially to maintain the quality, is you can give bonus points for things like training your teammates or getting reviews, right? Where you're mentioned by name, you can add bonus points for other things that you want to incentivize. Just remember that when you use a financial incentive, that it's going to show your people what you care about most. And so if you care most about speed, but you don't have anything there to protect the quality, then sometimes you're going to get in trouble because you might have some, rogue painter who's just like, well, I'm just going to do 20 points in a day. Well, at that point, you're going to have to tell them and actually be a leader and say, hey, this quality isn't where it needs to be. You need to slow down. Okay. I can't reward you points for this work standard. Okay. And so you got to hold them accountable in that way. So how would this whole, system work for contract labor versus employed labor? Now, I like to make a case for employed labor. I think that it's morally, I think it's the right thing to do. I think that too many people are misclassified as contract laborers. I think that in the long run, that's going to bite companies in the butt. I think it's a house of cards. Those are strong words. I get it. However, there are times where you find phenomenal people and they know how to be an independent contractor. They prefer it. They understand, their taxes. They understand the responsibility. And you really want to work with these people because they're good people. They do high quality work. I get it. Okay. I respect people who strive to be an entrepreneur. And why wouldn't I want to support that? Where I kind of get on my high horse is when we're pushing people to be a contract laborer when in reality they should probably be employed. And I only get on my high horse for that because I've made that error in the past, and I didn't like what it said about me as a leader when people were struggling. So I like employee model, but I get it. Sometimes the contract labor market is the way for you to grow your team. This system will still work with contract labor. Okay, from the way that they grow their team in a responsible way. A lot of subcontractors, they don't have these models in place. They don't know how to grow their teams responsibly, and what ends up happening is they grow too big for the structures that they have in place, and they stop making as much money. And you'll see some of these guys realize that, oh, I was making more money when it was just me and two other guys. When I had 5 people, I wasn't making enough money. They don't have those structures in place. This is an opportunity to coach them through it. Where we talked about that interview process, you can interview subcontractors, contract labor, just as you would an employed workforce. You want to get to know them. You want to make sure that there's alignment between your companies. You can sell these jobs in points and give them, break it down in points, just like we did, because it's just a unit of measurement. And you can give them a dollar amount per point. Where it differs with employees versus contract labor, here's the key. If we were to say, okay, at minimum wage, $15 per point, if they're employed at $15 per point, you have a labor burden that's going to increase the cost of that point by 20 to 25%, depending on where you're at. And so if it were 20%, let's say, your actual cost per point is going to be $18. Okay, even though they're getting paid, on their wage statement, and their hourly rate is calculated using that $15 per point, the real cost of that employee is going to be closer to about $18 per point that they produce. Okay. If you were to do it with the contractors, keep in mind that they are business owners. They have taxes to pay. They have insurance to maintain. They have to, pay for their tools, and so they have expenses beyond their wage rate. They're also, if they're going to build and grow a team, there is an expectation that they're able to earn money on top of their lower waged earners. And so doing an apples to apples payout isn't going to work here. You're going to have to, at the very least, give them that $18 as opposed to $15, because they have to pay for those things. But the reality is that they're probably going to expect more. And so you're going to just have to negotiate it with them. But the reality is that when you're presenting them with a work order and you're saying, this is the scope of work, you can tell them, this is how many points are in this job. And you can coach them through this. You can share this video with them and show them how it works. It's just that your price per point is going to be different from your employed labor versus your contract labor. That is, that's the system in a nutshell. I'm a believer of it. And the reason that I believe in this so much is because I have seen it work, and I've seen other models and doing other things fail. I've experienced both of those things. I've experienced failure, and I've experienced successes using this system versus not using the system. I've also embedded in this course well-researched theories and studies and evidence about good leadership and good hiring practices and good onboarding practices. I've consulted with experts in the field of HR and hiring. I have studied MBA courses, where we talk about these things and we learn these things, and we understand that this approach is evidence-based. It's infused with things that work, not just in the painting industry, but across massive industries where you have employees of, there's thousands of employees. These are the strategies that are well researched, well documented, and they work. And they're all part of the sprint system. And it's a strong reason for why you should continue with them. I hope you've enjoyed this module, and I hope that you enjoy the other ones as well. And until next time, have hope, take courage, and be the leader that your people want to work for.